I am Reverend L. Jerome Plummer Fowler. Adam Francis Plummer, my great-great-grandfather, was born, he says, in 1819. His mother and father were on the Calvert property in Upper Marlboro. His parents had a total of 8 children. There were 3 boys and 5 girls.
In 1829, the Calvert split up its slave holdings, including the Plummer family, when they established a second plantation in Prince George's County, Riversdale. At 10 years old, Adam was moved there, leaving his family behind.
Adam became the personal servant to Charles Benedict Calvert, who had come home from college. And so they became close. And Adam had a great respect for Charles Benedict. And we believe that Charles Benedict Calvert had a great respect for the slave. That was his personal servant. In time, Adam moved on to other positions at the plantation.
In the 1830s, John Bowser, an itinerant minister and former slave, came to work at the plantation. During his time at Riversdale, he secretly taught Adam how to read and write phonetically. The reason behind Bowser's freedom is unknown.
When his time was over, he left, and he had given Adam textbooks to read, and he had taught him how to begin to write his name and whatnot. But Adam continued to exercise those skills into his adulthood and throughout his life. Emily Saunders Plummer, my great-great-grandmother, the oldest of 25 children of her mother, Nellie, was a slave at Three Sisters Plantation, located in what is now Springdale, on the grounds where the high school was built recently. That was a huge plantation. It was much larger than Riversdale. And it spread from that area, Springdale, all the way beyond Bowie, Maryland. They met when Adam was at Riversdale Plantation because my great-great-great-grandmother, Nellie, came over to visit her sister who had taken sick while she was at Riversdale visiting her husband. But Emily was not interested in this young man. So she just ignored him. But eventually, in visiting back and forth, they got acquainted, and she eventually allowed him to court her. And when they were ready to get married, with permission, Adam borrowed a horse and carriage from his master, Charles Benedict Calvert, drove it over to Three Sisters, picked up his bride and her maid of honor, and they drove into Washington, D.C. in the spring of 1841. Adam, for the next 10 years, from 1841 to 1851, on Saturday night, after his chores were done and his assignments were completed, he would walk the 6 or 8 miles with packages, with food, with supplies for his wife's cabin. And he'd get over there and they would spend that time together on Saturday night. He had to be back at Riversdale when the sun came up on Monday morning. And he was for 10 years until Miss Sally, Miss Sarah Hillary, died in August of 1851. And she left a will instructing the lawyer what to be done with the property, what was to be done with the slaves who were considered not human but property. Emily and her children were to be sold on the auction block. Adam and Emily, at that time, had 5 children. Sarah Miranda was 9. And then there was Henry Vinton Plummer. Henry Vinton was 7 years old. Then there was Quincy, who was 5. And then a girl who was 3. And then my great-grandfather, Nicholas Saunders Plummer, who was 6 weeks old, held at his mother's arms. He was sold. And they went to a family by the Thompson family who lived in Northwest Washington on Meridian Hill.
Emily and 3 of her children were sold while Sarah Miranda and Elias Cupid remained at 3 sisters. They remained with the Thompson family until 1863. Colonel Thompson was a cruel master, but Emily defended her children from his punishments. Living conditions were worse at Meridian Hill, and Adam was only allowed to visit every 2 weeks. Their 6th child, Marjorie Ellen, was born in early 1853, but due to the conditions, she died less than a year later in June of 1854.
Slaves in Maryland were not freed until 1864. But after he was freed, Adam became the foreman of the plantation. And he was in charge of everything. And he was paid a salary of $15 a month. His wife, Emily, got a job as a cook, working for the Hyatt family, from which we get the name Hyattsville. There was a man in Hyattsville. He was Caucasian, and he considered himself the law. His name was B.F. Guy. He sold houses and property and whatnot. And Adam went to him and asked him to sell him some property. And he saw this as a chance to get over on this slave with no education. And so he presented a plan for Adam to buy 10 acres, more or less, of land that had not been developed near Hyattsville. And it would cost him $1,000. B.F. Guy, whenever he wanted money, he would send a message through somebody else to Adam to bring him so much money on such and such a date. And he did that purposely because he intended to get as much money out of this slave as he could before he canceled the bargain. And it took him, he was supposed to pay it off in 2 years. He paid it off, I believe, in 15 months. And when that happened, Mr. Guy was furious because the people, the white men in Hyattsville, did not want a Negro or a black person owning property. But Adam prevailed. He started building his house, his first house. And they moved on that property, moved to that property in 1872. Adam learned to garden at a young age. Roses were his favorite. He mastered different breeds of roses. And so when he bought the 10 acres, he named that Mount Rose because of his love for flowers. They lived there until his wife, Emily, died in 1876. If it had not been for Adam and Emily's youngest daughter, Nellie Arnold Plummer, she had the good sense. Her father kept a diary, and she never touched the diary as long as he lived. But after he died on December 13th, 1905, she took her father's diary and started reading it. And from that diary, she basically wrote her book, Out of the Depths of the Triumphs of the Cross. In 1927, she published her book. She made sure that every household in the Plummer, the Arnold, the whatever part of the family they were, got a copy of that book. Every household. And that was like the Bible. But we didn't know what happened to the diary.
Before her death in 1933, Nellie Arnold Plummer made the decision to give her father's diary to her cousin from her mother's side, Edward Arnold, for safekeeping. The diary was then passed down through generations. In 2001, Lucille Betty Tompkins Davis learned that the family was searching for the diary, which she had in her possession, and contacted Jerome Fowler. The Plummer family decided to give the diary to the Smithsonian Anacostia Community Museum. The diary has been preserved, transcribed, and digitized for people all over the world and can be visited on the Anacostia website.
Adam and Emily had 9 children. All of Adam and Emily's children were born into slavery from 1842 to 1860. They were all born into slavery. But all of them came forth with a determination to make something of their lives. And that's our heritage. And that's a heritage that we're very proud of. That nobody, the boys or the girls, none of them use slavery as the excuse not to survive. And so that's my story.